When Bubba Wallace climbed out of his car at San Diego after finishing second, he was frustrated. Genuinely, openly frustrated. And if you saw the headlines, you might assume you know why. His own teammate, a part-time driver named Corey Heim, had just beaten him to the win. So the easy story is, Bubba was mad he got beaten by a teammate, mad he lost a race he could have won. But that's not it. That's not why he was furious at all. And the real reason is so much more revealing, and honestly, a lot more relatable, than a simple case of sour grapes. Because here's what almost nobody is explaining properly. Bubba Wallace didn't just narrowly lose this race. He finished second after being 2 full laps down. 2 laps. He recovered from a disaster that should have ended his entire afternoon, clawed all the way back to a runner-up finish, and still wasn't satisfied. And what he said afterward about why, about the real source of his frustration, tells you everything about the season he's been living through, and why San Diego, despite being one of his best days of the year, left such a bitter taste. So today we're breaking down what actually happened, what Bubba really said, the recurring nightmare that's been haunting his entire 2026, and why this second-place finish is actually a much bigger deal than it looks. Stay with me. Welcome back to Freedom Line News, the channel where we don't just chase the drama, we break down what really happened. If you're new, hit subscribe. This community is growing every week. Let's get into it. To understand his reaction, you have to understand just how bad his day got before it got good. Because this was a comeback drive that almost nobody noticed in the chaos of the weekend. Bubba Wallace started 12th, and early on he was fast, genuinely fast. Within about 10 laps, he had carved his way all the way up to second place. The car was a rocket. He looked like a legitimate contender to win on a road course, which, as we'll get to, is remarkable in itself. And then disaster struck. On lap 19, his right front wheel came detached, a loose wheel. The crew hadn't secured it properly during a pit stop, and it rolled away. Now, in NASCAR, an uncontrolled tire or a loose wheel carries an automatic, severe penalty. Wallace was forced down pit road, and he was hit with a 2-lap penalty. 2 laps down. For most drivers on most days, that's the end of any hope. Your race is effectively over. You're now just circulating, trying to salvage a mediocre finish. And Wallace vented his frustration immediately over the team radio as he watched that wheel roll away. You could hear it, the sound of a great day falling apart through no fault of his own driving. But here's where it gets impressive. Because instead of accepting a ruined day, Bubba Wallace went on one of the drives of his season. He fought. Lap after lap, he clawed back the deficit. He made up the 2 laps. He worked his way back through the field on a tight, unforgiving street course where passing is genuinely difficult. And by the end of the race, he had recovered all the way to second place, crossing the line about 10 seconds behind the winner, from 2 laps down to runner-up. That's an extraordinary recovery on any track, let alone a brand new street circuit. And there's a fun detail here. The weekend before, Wallace had jokingly compared himself to Formula One legend Lewis Hamilton, giving himself the nickname Bubba Hamilton. And at San Diego, that alter ego showed up to play, because this was, statistically, the best road course result of Bubba Wallace's entire career. And that's not a small thing. Coming into this weekend, he had just one single top 5 finish in his previous 40 road and street course starts. 40. Road courses have historically been one of his biggest weaknesses, so to put together a drive like this, on this kind of track, after going 2 laps down, it should have been one of the most satisfying days of his year. And yet, he was furious. So if it wasn't about losing to Heim, what was it about? This is the real story. Wallace made it crystal clear. His frustration wasn't aimed at his teammate at all. It was aimed at the mistake, the loose wheel, and at a pattern that has haunted his entire 2026 season. He said the thing he was so caught up on was the hiccup, the error. He said his team has had a season full of what he called asterisk marks beside their results. The what-ifs. Races where the speed was there, where the result should have been there. But something, a mistake, a mechanical failure, a bit of bad luck, put an asterisk next to the finish. He talked about how hard everyone is working, how they're busting themselves to get it right, and yet they keep not getting the results they actually deserve. That's the real source of the fury. Not jealousy, not ego. It's the deep, grinding frustration of a driver and a team who feel like they keep doing enough to win and keep getting robbed of it by their own small mistakes. Second place, on a day where without that loose wheel he might have genuinely won, just became one more asterisk, one more what if on a season-long list. And this is the part that really tells you who Bubba Wallace is in this moment. Because despite all that frustration, he went out of his way to make sure everyone knew he was genuinely thrilled for Corey Heim. He said his body language and his facial expressions might not show it, but he was truly excited for Heim and his crew chief getting back to victory lane. He praised Heim for all the work he puts in behind the scenes on the weekends he's not even racing. He pointed out how special it is to get your first career cup win in just your 13th start. He acknowledged the strong personal relationship the two of them have built through the Toyota driver pipeline and within 23XI racing, and he even joked that Heim earned the bragging rights by beating him fair and square. That's a class act, a frustrated competitor who is still big enough to fully celebrate a teammate's breakthrough. The frustration and the graciousness existed side by side, and that's a very human, very real way to feel after a day like that. So what does this actually mean for Bubba Wallace going forward? More than you'd think. First, the result mattered in the standings. That runner-up finish moved him up 2 spots to 11th in the championship, and he now sits a comfortable 67 points above the playoff cut line. After a brutal May where 3 of his 4 races finished outside the top 22, this is a genuine turnaround, his second top 3 finish in 3 races. So despite the frustration, his playoff position is getting stronger, not weaker. But there's a footnote. NASCAR followed up by suspending 2 of his crew members for 2 races over that loose wheel, the standard penalty for that kind of safety violation. So the mistake didn't just cost him on track, it cost his team personnel too. And here's the forward-looking angle that makes this interesting. The next race is Sonoma, another road course. And Sonoma has historically been one of Bubba Wallace's single worst tracks, with an average finish there that's the worst of any track where he's made 7 or more starts. But after unlocking Bubba Hamilton at San Diego, he himself wondered, half joking, whether maybe his Sonoma weekend will finally go better this time. So the question becomes, was San Diego just a one-off rescue job? Or the start of Bubba Wallace finally figuring out road courses, right when his team needs it most? So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Bubba Wallace's frustration was completely justified? That loose wheel may have cost him a genuine win. Or should a recovery from 2 laps down to second be celebrated, not mourned? And do you think the San Diego comeback carries over to Sonoma? Or does that track get the better of him again? Drop it in the comments, hit like and subscribe to Freedom Line News, where we cover every NASCAR story with the detail it deserves. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.